Exclusions helash colossal etanisnet Jason to Satan Chitina Chin Class Colt Mish Okumel Tanitsin Kawatsin Tanitsin Samana Stitchawat Tai Iak Nikalos Iak Ayasneta Tanangana Kalkotamat and Attain Kiam to the main Squeakolatapla Iak Tiwanamatla Iak Hananot Iak Kotsimotuk Tanasal Silala. I'm just gonna have to ask that you I'm gonna point the mic at you and you're gonna say Lakwangin.
Okay.
I didn't say cheer, I said you're gonna do what I say. Whose land are you on? Lakwangin! I'm gonna point the mic at you again and you're gonna say Satanich. Whose land are you on? Satanich! So this is the home of my ancestors. This is what we call Sichanang, means you're entering Satanich. And I'm going to point the mic at you again, and you're going to say from the bottom of your belly, matriarchal. What is the law of this land? Matriarchal! So when you're here, you understand that this land was owned by the women. So I highly encourage that you make sure when people are gathering and there's all these pictures being taken and these videos being taken, that the people at the front are not people who commit harm against women or queer non-binary people. They should not be the face of this movement. How many times do Indigenous women, queer Indigenous people, have to come up to the front and say, we will not allow the violent perpetrators be up at the front, making people feel unsafe, making them feel like they can't be a part of a revolution. So if you are somebody who you know you cause harm, we want you to do well and be well. But there is no need for you to be up at the front. You do not need to be the face of any movement if you harm people. If you intimidate them and use the colonial government, use the colonial tools of oppression for your own benefit. Because that is what's taking place right now in Palestine by the Israelis. They walked into people's homes and they stole them. They said, this is our house now. You don't get to live here anymore. They were welcomed into homes when they were trying to find safety. They were cared for. And then they turned around and kicked those people out of their homes. And the same thing happened here. There is a farm on the Sandwich Peninsula. There was an article about it a few years ago. They said it's the oldest farm on the Sandwich Peninsula. Not one account of that farm, in not one account of the story of that farm in Seaside magazine or whatever it's called. It was not said that the reason that that family had a farm is because the Satanich people saw a man being treated poorly by other settlers. They didn't want him. They didn't want to support him. They didn't want him to have land. But our people didn't want to see him suffer. So they said, you can farm here. Just let us harvest our camas and you can live here and you can make a life for yourself. That's who we are. That's who we are as Satanich people. That's who the Palestinians are when they welcome people into their home. Because when you see somebody suffering, you try to help them. You try to help them. My great-great-grandmother was 10 years old when Gassy Jack was stealing our land. They barricaded us out to create what you know as Gastown. They barricaded us out with trees 3, 4, maybe 10 times bigger, I don't know, than these trees. Big enough that all of us would be the circumference of the tree trunks. They took trees that large, that ancient. They cut them down and made them fences. They said, we want to keep you people out because we're stealing your land here right now. Not unlike giant walls around Gaza. And yet, my 10-year-old ancestor, barely an ancestor, just a late elder. She was 10 years old and she saw them. They were going to die if she didn't go help them. And she paddled across that inlet to go and save them. She's a 10-year-old girl. Think of 10-year-old girls you know right now. Can you see those girls hopping in a canoe and going to help somebody? But that's the capability of that was the capability of Indigenous people not very long ago. It would have been so adept at being on the water that at 10 years old, you knew you could go and help those people. And she sang a song. This song came from her soul to praying to the divine feminine. This is why I said you are on matriarchal land, where women are the center, children are the center, life givers are the center. We are sacred. All life is sacred. There's no difference between any human being and any tree, even that pole, the ground you walk on, the wind that is blowing this way right now. There is no difference between any of you and any of those things I mentioned. But if you identify as a life giver, you have something more. You're already connected to the heartbeat of Mother Earth. If you identify as a life giver, you know I have a responsibility for more than just myself. That's what it means to be a part of a matriarchal society. I have a responsibility for more than just me. And I have a responsibility to make sure my society knows they must live up to that responsibility that we all must live up to. To be a woman, I have to show these people the way. That is a matriarchal society. And so when I come up here demanding that there's no violence against women, that the people who commit violence against women don't get to be the face of any of these movements, it's because I have a responsibility to do so. And because I'm not afraid to use my voice. Do you understand that very few people have the audacity to talk to me in certain ways? Very few people even hope to talk to me. And that's because I know who I am. I love myself so much, just like I love this land. And if anyone should be afraid to walk through this space, it damn sure is not going to be me. And I have a responsibility to make sure everyone feels just as safe and belonging here. And the way you do that is you treat everyone with kindness. That's the first law of Satanish people. You know, we're all going to make mistakes. We will all make mistakes. I cry and I carry that load of the mistakes I've made. But my ancestors would say, knock it off. Do the work you got to do to become better. They'll have their pity for me and my emotions, but they want me to be strong because I am strong. They want you all to be strong because you are strong. And so I'll say that the macro and the micro, it's all the same. you know. We want to end, essentially, the violence of men. Because when they came to this land, they targeted indigenous women and girls. That's probably why I look so young, just so that even though I'm almost 40 years old, you're going to look at me and be like, I can see what a 12-year-old Squamish girl looked like. Because that's what they wanted to marry off, was 12-year-old girls who owned the land, so they could steal her land. And that wasn't our culture. That is something that came from Europe. And they knew if they could teach indigenous men to be violent against us and girls, children, then they could steal the land more easily. So that's what they did across the whole globe. They taught violence, they taught abuse, especially sexualized violence. And so when I say we want to end the violence of men, that's the thing I'm talking about, because that's what they're doing. That's what Israel is doing. They've sent over sex offenders to colonize Israel, and they sent sex offenders to colonize Canada. It's one and the same. They knew what they were doing. They know that sexualized violence is what makes it easier to steal land. And so when I'm saying I want us to stop violence of men, it means we make sure that in these spaces, everyone feels safe. Everyone. And that we do not hold up people who cause harm.